So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Soul Focus. This is my special guest, Lorene. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Lorene Hughes. Oh.
Well done. Kapai, well done.
Ooh. Okay, my job's done. How are you tonight?
I'm really well, really enthusiastic and happy to be here.
Excellent. Have you had a good day?
Oh, super busy, excellent day, super cool.
Oh,
yeah, we got people.
We have
people, yay! Hi, Amanda. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Melissa.
Woo! Now you're a healer and a reader. You do a lot of modalities.
I do.
You do? How about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Whew. Okay, we've got our elevator pitch, right? 10 seconds.
It's a 1 hour show. Take your time.
Okay, so goodness, my energetic healing journey, what I deal with now is a lot of trauma release. That's probably the largest amount of stuff that I work with now. But we also, just recently, I was working with a teenager with, bulimia and cutting issues, which obviously is trauma as well. But I've worked with people who have, I've done relationship counseling basically between a living person and their dead mother. That was really super fun.
That's interesting.
And there's been a few moments where I've actually had to do a lot of relationship healing in the spiritual realm with people, especially with parents and things like that. There's a lot of that stuff that happens when we're little that we don't realize has an energetic impact on the way that we and our belief structure and systems that then flows on through our lives, and we have no idea until much later on. And then it's like, boom, stuffs keep going wrong. And you're like, what's going on? My body's not healing right. Or I just can't seem to get over this type of relationship. I keep getting the same kind of relationship over and over again. What is going on? So yeah, that's a lot about sort of what I do in the meat and guts of it all.
Okay. That's very interesting. So you were saying that certain people, we all go, people learn your lessons. Otherwise, you keep repeating the same lesson. But do you think that sometimes that there's attachments that just make it really hard for people to some sort of emotion that makes it really hard for them to learn the lesson or just move past it?
At times, yes. I was actually, interestingly, I was listening to, because it got thrown in my face 3 times within a month, the book called Conversations with God. Yep. And I don't know if you've read it or listened to it, but oh my word, it is a great book. And it links in really, really well with another book I listened to just recently, because I'm an Audible fiend these days, called the Sophia Code, which was...
I've heard about that.
Blew my mind, and so much about that made sense for what I was doing and how I be. But the Conversations with God is right in there as well. I see Sally is agreeing. It's the best book ever. Love it. And it was talking about, we're not here to learn lessons. We're here to remember, because we've actually chosen to forget, which is why these things keep coming around over and over again, and to trigger us to remember how to actually work with these elements and these things.
Yeah, I guess. So, if we remembered everything, it'd be like playing the same computer game over and over again with all the cheats. It'd get pretty boring, wouldn't it?
You could, or it could be that you just get to an extra level of ascension that you haven't even considered yet.
Okay, I like that. Talk more about that.
Well, the way that we live at the moment, as I'm sure you would agree, is very limited in general society. Whereas the possibilities of the capacities that we could have, if we actually allowed ourselves to perceive, know, be, and receive everything that we've ever known, everything we've ever been, every intuition, every, all the stuff, if we allowed ourselves to actually receive that, like, how easy would our lives be? How much would we actually just instantly create, actualize, manifest, whatever word you like, our lives? And suddenly all the things that really seem to be a bother to us at this point would no longer be a bother anymore, because we'd be working with the laws of nature, And it's like, oh gosh, now that sounds like fun. Where we actually just get to be and create and have fun, like, and love. Like, if that was the sum total of everything, like, that's my ideal life.
So how do we get on the way to that?
Ooh, that's a good question, my friend.
Is that your next book? Is my next book coming out? Buy the book.
I reckon. But I would, in the simplest terms, and I mean, I'm only a novice in the big scheme of things, I guess you could say. I don't think I'm an ascended master at this point. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, maybe you are too. Who knows? But I get, for me and where we are at, the biggest thing is to have allowance and gratitude. If we have allowance and gratitude for all that is, we can not be in polarity anymore. And
I know people have had gratitude. What do you mean by allowance?
Allowance is being able to see what is and not going into right and wrong, good and bad about it. Not being black and white, just looking at it and going, okay, that is what it is. It's like the flowers don't judge whether they'll grow there or not. If they grow, they grow. If they don't, they don't. They don't sit there as little seeds going, oh, but I really wanted to grow there and now I can't.
I talk to that humans all the time.
Exactly right. Okay, they just move on. They choose somewhere else. They embody themselves as something else.
That's amazing. So it's about being in the present moment and just not being attached.
Yeah, and I like what Sally says, neutrality, very much. And there's a lot of polarity happening in the world right now. Like people's points of views. You've got family members and friends that have turned against each other for whatever reasons. I'm not going to go into any of that, but it's just like there's so much polarity, and it's very much been manufactured to split our society. And the way that we can get to the ascension that we were talking about is by bringing that back together and just being an allowance of each other and whatever points of views we have. So we don't have to agree all the time, but there has to be that space of allowance to be able to move forward as a community and to be able to access that level of love, that unconditional love that we actually truly all be.
Well, it's amazing what happens is when you stop trying to tell people and you just allow them to be there, it's just a lot easier on the relationship.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of people have been through a lot of stuff where what we're going through at the moment, where they're like, hey, haven't you seen that? Haven't you worked out that yet? And it gets toxic trying to tell other people what's going on.
Yeah.
We just end up pushing people away.
Yeah, for sure. And I know for me, especially over the last couple of months, I've really looked at where is my energy going? Where am I actually focusing on right now? And because I know that even in talking about this is good, this is bad, this is blah, 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 it's adding energy to that. What we resist persists, right? So it's another beautiful concept that's in a few different modalities, and including the book of Conversations with God. It's in there as well. It's in there in Sophia Code. It's in there in so many of the modalities that I play with, of what you resist persists. So if you're I've seen this come out in a beautiful way with my family, and where they will not talk about their emotions. They will not talk about their feelings. They will shove them in the cupboard until that cupboard is bursting open and full. And it's all it takes is for one person, i.e. me, come along and just tickle that little lock a little bit, and suddenly it's all coming out. Because they have resisted those smaller moments of, actually dealing with those emotions and feelings and all of that. They've resisted it, they've pushed it away, but it's still there. And then it becomes really toxic and hurts them,
Well, we carry so much because we're worried about other people's feelings, worried about how it looks, we're worried about this, and it just makes it very difficult. I mean, we're taught to be polite and all this. It's hard to navigate sometimes with the tools that we've been given.
Yeah, exactly. And we haven't been given any tools until you start getting into the woo-woo world, and then suddenly things start opening up, and it's like, but even me saying into the woo-woo world, that in itself can be seen as a judgment, because it's a separation, right?
Yep.
So it's like, what if we didn't even have that? What if it was just another modality, another way of being, a different way of being, and it doesn't have to be lumped off to the side or pushed to the, I think for me, I've certainly, interesting. For me, I certainly find it easier when I'm focusing on what life and energy I would like to create in the future. What is the life of my desires? What do I truly desire to create in the world? And when I tap into that energy, and like even now my body is just like, I've got goosebumps all over. It's like, that's what I'm creating right now. Yeah, I know, right? Because you and me, this conversation, these beautiful people sitting in the chat there, that is part of the energy of the life that I'm choosing to create right now.
Yep.
That is my true self. That is where I'm sitting. And that is, I wish to contribute to these beautiful people in whatever way I can right now, even if it's just them listening to this conversation.
Yep.
That's, thank you. And to Pooja, yes, pick a number between 1 and 88, please, including at 1 and 88. And for Sally, if you would like to do that, or anybody else, I'll explain later. Cool. You can find me too, Sally.
Yep. Sally was last week's guest.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, but you got to tell me what the number is, Sally. I can't pick it out of the air. So, awesome. Amanda, hi. Nice to see you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to hop into, I'm just going to take over Brooke's show now.
Yeah, fine. It's about you, the show.
So there's a fun little story. And all right, oh, goodness gracious, hang on a second, Rita. All right, I'll write these down, okay? All right, I can scroll back up, can't I?
Yep.
Yeah, all right, cool bananas. So this is my intuitive poetry book. Whee! Here we go. Okay. And this creation was really quite cute how it came out. So this is covering 25 years of my life. And I wrote poetry from a teenager, and it was a way for me to help process what was going on in my world, relationships and all that sort of stuff. When you're a teenager and everything's like, it was a really good, healthy way for me to bring that down and put it into words so I could actually work with it. And nobody ever got to see my poetry. It sat in my poetry book. I never ever showed anybody. It was like my private diary.
Yep.
And I went to a set of classes in Hawaii, and I was I think it was back in 2016 maybe. And while I was there, we were asked the question, what have we already created that we've totally disregarded because we've already created it? It's something that very fast creators do, is that we will make it, like, we'll have an idea, we'll put it into, like, do something with it, and then poof, we'll leave it because we've already created it. But for something like a book, it means that you have to actually continuously focus on it, right? And it's like something that actually requires to be tapped in fairly often. It's like a podcast. You can't, like, just do the one show and then expect it to maybe suddenly take off. It requires that constant nurturing and care to move forward and to be seen by lots of people and have people come and ask, say, hey, can I come on as a guest or whatever? So there's that thing that fast creators sometimes forget, that they actually require to keep tapping into their creations even though they've already created them. And so I came back from Hawaii and I was like, okay, what have I already created that, you know, I've totally disregarded because I've already created it? And I heard poetry, and I went, no. And then a couple of days later, I was living in a little place all by myself, had nobody come to visit or anything, came home from work, and my poetry book had come out of the shelf and was sitting on the floor. And I looked at it and I said, no. And I put it back. See, my spirit team's a bit stubborn sometimes. A couple of days later, I continued to ask the question, thinking I'd get a different answer. No. A couple of days later, I came home again and the book was halfway out of the shelf. And I was like, oh, fine. I'll just start typing it up. And one of my beautiful friends from Canada had actually sent me some templates and stuff that she uses when she does, because she's a author as well. So she'd actually sent me some templates and I was like, all right, I'll do, all right. And it wasn't until I had the book back in my hot little hands and I was on a beautiful podcast called Writers on Air, and the lady said to me, oh, well, do you want to read some of your poems? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I said, oh, look, pick a number between 1 and 88, just like I did for you guys.
Yep.
And she's actually read the book at this point, and she told me a number and I read it out and she's like, oh my God, that's exactly where I'm at right now. I was like, cool. Wow, that's kind of cool. Wow. Carried on through the show. She asked for another number and it was about my cat who had died. And she goes, oh my God, my dog had to get put down last week. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool.
There you go. Told you.
So I was just, even at that point, though, I was like, oh, I don't know what this is really about, but okay. And then it just started being asked to be used more and more and more through my readings and stuff like that. And I became aware that it's actually an intuitive poetry book. It was divinely created, and there are certain things about it that is the reason why it is what it is. It's like, even coming down to the table of contents, by this stage I'd relented and I was just like, okay, whatever. All right, are we putting a table of contents at the front or what? And it's like, nope, not at the front. And I was like, okay. At the back? It's like, yes. And it was like, and I said, do you want to be called a table of contents? It was like, no, I don't. I wish to be called a creation key. And I'm like, okay, that's what you want to be called? Fine.
That'll do.
So that's where we're at. All righty. So let's jump back up. We've got Rita, who's picked 18. And do I remember any of the poems? No, not really. But like, even cool things like at the bottom of each poem, you can't really see, but this wording here, I don't know, Brooke, you're old enough, I think, to perhaps remember, you know, when you'd go and get a tape or a CD and you'd get the words, like the slip with the words in there, the lyrics. And I always used to think, after I'd read the lyrics, I'd be like, I wonder what the author, like the writer, was thinking when they wrote that song. And so that's why I actually included in each of underneath each of them is a little blurb about what I was going through at that time. And although for when I'm doing reading work, that blurb isn't necessarily relevant, but it's neat when somebody actually picks up my book and they have a read of it from cover to cover and they can see the progression because it's done in chronological order. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. All right, Rita. Thank you for waiting so patiently for me to get my story through. That was the abridged story. Reaching out. Help me in this time in my life. Help me get through these days smoothly. Help me to see the bright side. Help me to achieve what I want in life. Help me to move into the next stage, to make the most of the only life that I've got. Help me to be happy. But most of all, help me by being there in thought, feeling, or just as a presence. So please help me. So Rita, what I'm sensing in that is that you're struggling a little bit. You're feeling a bit isolated and alone. And what I'd like to just extend to you from your spirit team is that they are always around you, that they are there as a presence. They are there to help you. And what they're asking through this poem is to say, just ask us. Spend some quiet time, even just 5 or 10 minutes a day. Just be like still, even if you like gaze at something, a plant or what else are they asking for here? Like lights, or just give your mind something to focus on and allow them to contribute to you and come around you and be with you. Okay, I hope that helps. All right, Amanda, we've got 34 for you. Okay, Amanda. This one's called The Loss. In these days of sorrow, when your loved one has left you, they are at peace with life, to have no more suffering and no more tears. Know that although you grieve, that the memory of them will be with you forever, to remember and smile upon. So there's somebody who's passed fairly recently for you, and they're just letting you know that they are still very close to you, and they're grateful to no longer be in pain and to no longer have any tears or suffering. And they're also asking for you to just be very aware of them, but celebrate them. Remember them with happiness and not how they were when they passed. Okay. All right. Who have we got next? We've got, let's see. Oh, you're welcome, Rita. All right. Sally with the number 8. Very relevant for what we were just talking about earlier, about having allowance. Okay. So this one's called Worries. In this world, there are many of them, most of which we could do without. They come in many shapes and forms and can arise at any time. The only way to solve them is to confront them. If they are avoided, they grow. To hope that they'll go away is fantasy. But life would be boring without them. When we find that they're getting on top of us, that's when it's too much and it brings us down. So to be content, we have to combat the damaging to keep healthy and happy. So Sally, my love, remember, we have to have a little bit of the darkness to remind us of what the light looks like. Don't get too wrapped up in the worries and the woes of the world. And remember that there's always going to be a little bit of a challenge to remind us of the pleasure. There's going to be always a little bit of pleasure in the challenge. So just keep that in your focus as you move through and have that allowance for all it is. Okay? Oh, gosh, who knew this was going to be so popular book?
they can smell new readings. They can smell free readings. They come from miles around.
Yeah. All right, we got Tina, and we got 65. I'm curious to see what you chose, Brooke.
47.
I know, I saw it, but I was like, I'm curious to know. We haven't got there yet. We'll work down to it.
We'll get there.
All right, so just to double check myself, because I got myself all giggly. Yep, cool. All right, Tina, you got the answer. Okay, so my body betrays my heart, mind, and obligations. What to do when it tests your very limits of right and wrong, to confront it head on and risk everything, or run with it and risk all that is good, knowing what to do, but it is so hard because what is right isn't always adventurous or fun. What will last, my heart and mind or body? What a rhetorical question. So, Tina, I'm getting a lot of what's it all for in your world? And there's an element of like, I don't know what to trust. I don't know whether to trust what I'm hearing or in my head or in my heart. So what I would suggest to you is if you know the sway technique on muscle testing, if you don't, private message me later and we'll go through it. But that is a really good way to, at the very basic level, start to learn how to trust you and your awarenesses. And there's a couple of other tools and techniques that maybe we might have time for that I would like to share with all of you around actually tapping into what is true for you. Okay, so I hope that helps a little. Okay, Pooja, I know you said 43 and then you changed it to 44, but I'm actually going to go with 43 because that's the first number that you chose. And that's the important part about this. It's always important to go with the one that you chose first, not necessarily your favorite number. Okay. And yeah. Okay. You've got paths and fate. After all these years, could it be so? Could I still be in love? The ache in my heart says yes. The voices around me say it would be a mistake. But then I've always made my own way. I've loved another so completely, but still I love you. We have grown both in our feelings, minds, and wisdom. And once again, our paths have crossed. This time, I think we need to do something to put my heart at ease. Fate is trying its hardest to push us together, but sometimes it is best to flow freely with fate. That's a bit of a mouthful. I have come to a place of peace in my life, of understanding and of patience. I feel that you have too. This may be a sign that at last we are ready for each other and that this world and the people in it are ready for us. Now, this is an interesting one because, my dear Pooja, this is the relationship with you and your body, you and you. And it is time for you to really start loving you. It is time for you to really embrace what the separation that you've been trying to go through, the thoughts, feelings, and opinions of others that have come into your world so much in the past. It's like you've finally got to a point in your life where you're kind of like, you know what, I kind of know where I'm at, but you're still like juggling a little bit. So what I'm getting with this is like, really, as it says, we are ready for each other. Your heart, your mind, your body, your being is absolutely ready to just go forward now and be the strength and the magic and the incredible being that you truly be. And, you know, bugger everybody else and what they're thinking, feeling about you. Like, let all that go, let all their judgments go, let all their opinions of you go, okay? And just be you in the relationship with you and your body, okay? Okay.
Do you pick numbers? Do you sometimes pick numbers for other people, or do you always get them to pick the number?
I always get them to pick the number.
Okay.
Yeah. I never pick it for them. It's just in that case where they've gone 43, no, 44. 44, yep. 44. It's like, no. Because intuitively, it's like I actually just quickly asked also, okay, what's true? What's the number that actually is requiring to be heard right now? And that was the 43, not the 44. Okay. Oh, yay! Guess who we're up to? Brooke, it's your turn. All right. Okay, you're gonna love it.
Let me have it.
All right. So it's so fragile. My sensitive soul, you're so easily hurt. I never intended to make you angry. I was only telling what I thought was the truth. There have been times when I've been offended, but I try to let that slide. How can I apologize if you won't listen? Your eyes are cold, and this makes me ache to my core. Please smile again. Let your arms accept my embrace. Now, given our conversation in the green room earlier, this is to do with that. And it's to do with the previous relationship, otherworldly relationship. And there's some contractual stuff happening in there around, like you feel like you've hurt them. And so you're trying to make up for it. And that's when these hooks and cords are coming in and it keeps drawing you back. Okay.
Yep.
So there's that.
I thought that much.
Well done. It's a good one. It's a good one for actually just really showing those hurt spaces. So there's that feeling stuff that we were talking about earlier of people who go and shove stuff in the cupboard. That may have very well have happened in that other lifetime for you.
Yep.
And like you tried to push it away because it just hurt too much at the time. It hurt too much to deal with at the time. And also for that other person, it hurt too much for them at the time. And rather than actually being honoring of the process, you've both kind of gone, and then now you've come back through each other's worlds in this lifetime, and it's like it's coming up to be healed. So how fun is that?
Heaps of fun and games.
Yeah. All right. Push is very, very insistent on the 44. Oh dear, you're so funny.
You'll have to buy the book, Pooja. All links are in the show notes.
Okay, Leandra, it was between 88. 98 doesn't exist yet. But what are you aware of, I'm wondering? Oh, there we go. She's changed it to 73. And hi, Kate. Hi, Jocelyn. Okay. Did we want to talk about something else for a little while, or would you like to keep going with this?
There's only a few more left. Yeah, knock them
out. All right. Okay, we've got Leandra. I hope I'm saying that correctly. 73, which is love addict. My love for you is intoxicating. It makes me feel all giddy, but I can feel it's becoming a crutch by which I am basing my happiness. Like any addiction, I need to hold it away, to reevaluate it, to only sample it, not devour the whole lot in one gulp, leaving nothing but an empty memory. So, Leandra, where are you relying on someone else for your happiness? That happiness that you require to be and have is within you. And it's time for you to discover that for you and not rely on other people to give that to you, because they can't. We can only receive what we ourselves are willing to be. And it is time for you to step out from that Snow White syndrome, if you know what that is, where we're always, as women, relying on the man to come and rescue us, to be our knight in shining armor. But what if you could actually be that for yourself? And Kate, 62 for you, my love, because that was the first number you said. Okay. Interesting. The curious thing about this poem, Kate, is that I actually wrote this back in 2001. So what is that, 20 odd years ago? And it is so relevant to now. And I just find that absolutely, it blows my mind every time it pops up. So it's called Generation X. How can we live all this hating and fighting, arguing, bitching and complaining, putting us in the deep, dark hole of self-obsession, depression, wanting to get out of something we don't know the name of, reaching out only to have our fingers chopped off. Too many tears, a river full to be exact, but still not enough to fill up this darkness and drown us. People say, fix it yourself. How can we when we don't know how or even what it is? Walking in a blur. They can't see us or don't hear us. Maybe they don't want to. They don't want to think they have heard it all before. If we make it through, would anyone notice how much pain we've been in? Probably not. Why would they want to? They would have to get involved with us, in us, and actually care about us. We are alive, but only just, hanging on with what's left of our own self-worth, helping ourselves to what others wouldn't give us, leaving behind the traitors, walking one day at a time, slowly escaping the dark hole that was our life, beginning to value us, not relying on anyone but ourselves, giving us what we needed the most. That's a very powerful poem. Thank you for choosing that, for tuning in on that one. And it is a poem that is very much, like I said, it's very relevant for our current times, but in relation to your beautiful self, this is a poem of great encouragement. You've been through a lot. You've figured out who are your traitors and who are your support team, and really embrace who is your support team. Keep them nice and close to you and keep moving forward, because you've got this. Whatever is going on in your life, it is only temporary, and you can do this and keep moving. Take a moment to reflect on just how far you've come already, and then you'll see that you're actually on the upwards now. You're actually in the light part now. It might not quite feel like it, but you truly, truly are. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that.
I think you missed one. Annette said number 7, I think.
Oh, yay. Hello, Annette. Hello, my dear friend. I did. How did I miss Annette? Where was that?
I'm sure it was number 7.
Yes, you're correct. All right. I don't know if Annette's actually played with my book yet.
Oh, you know Annette?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. Okay, darling. You ready? Loneliness is something I can't quite explain. It can hurt, make me feel out of it. It's a heavy feeling which is inside my body. It's a part of my mind, but it's released through my heart. I go all silent. I can't explain why, and I don't want to be alone again. So, Miss Annette, there's some stuff that you've got to heal within you, okay? Some of that past trauma of being alone and left alone and abandoned. So as you're moving through into this next stage of your life, look at those little elements that are coming up at the moment and spend some time and actually do some little soul work with that. Okay? You're all good.
Yeah, you were talking about spirit teams before.
Yeah.
What was it? Balancing the... Are you talking about the... What was it that you said? It's right before the show.
Oh, spirit teams and how they can assist you.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes. So a lot of people talk about guides and angels and all that sort of stuff. And I prefer a spirit team because the way that what is true for me is that my awareness of me and what is true for me is paramount to anything and everything.
Yep.
Like what I know is true for me, nobody else can say that that's wrong because it's true for me, right? So when we talk about spirit guides, it places them in a spot of authority over you rather than at the same level as you. So that's why I talk about a spirit team, because a spirit team is someone that is a group that you can like, it's like your best friends around you. You're at the same level, right? And so, or even as, you know, fellow team members, employees, if you like, where you can actually ask them to go and do stuff for you. So as a business owner, for example, this happened the other day. I was going to bed, and as I was going to sleep, I went, I wonder what it would take. This was like on a Friday night. I was like, I wonder what it would take to have, you know, another person book in a session over the weekend. I wonder what that would be like. And I was like, hey team, can you help that to happen? I woke up in the morning and somebody random, a brand new person had booked in a session.
Yep.
And I was like, thank you, team. You know.
Yeah, we'll try that one.
And it's amazing. So you can use that for absolutely anything and everything. You can, when you're fully connected to all the parts and pieces of yourself, this includes the spirit team. And so you can literally have your spirit team assist you with anything. You can, and I mean anything. Like there's been times that I've had my spirit team in my car. My car is part of my spirit team. And like I've had her create free car services. I'm like, it's a $400 car service, and she totally created it for free.
Oh, nice.
I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. Well done. You. I'll receive that. Thank you very much. You know, and this is what we were talking about before, of having that life of ease. And, you know, when you're really in alignment and just not in polarity and not in judgment, you can create stuff like that all the time. And it's like, it's so fun and it's exciting to see what you can create next, you know.
You would also, another thing you brought up was hyperindependence. What can you tell us about that? Okay, so part of my life remembering, if you like, in my journey was about realizing that I was hyper independent. So I'll try and keep this part of the story reasonably short, but I am the oldest of 4 children to my mum. Me and my 2 brothers within 9 years. And my mum split up with my dad at a time when she was actually pregnant with the second boy, so her 3rd child. And I was 6.5, 7 years old. Yep. And I became the parent in that relationship. So I became the person that looked after my mum. I became the person that looked after my brothers. I became the person that looked after the state of the home. And my mum was in mass depression. But it was the 80s. Nobody talked about depression back then. They didn't even know really what it was. Even if you had postnatal depression, it was called baby blues, and just you were kind of told to get over it, right? Yeah, here's some value. Mm-hmm. And so
with that, I became incredibly independent. And that independence became my safety blanket. So nobody could really do anything for me. I had to do it myself. And that is okay up to a point. But when you start getting into relationships as an adult and you've got these lovely men who would really like to contribute to you and you won't let them do anything, they begin to doubt themselves. And then it becomes a big, huge, massive rupture in the relationship because I was just not willing to receive anything from anybody. And that even flowed through to my work, all sorts of different relationships. So it became a space where even my bosses would say, look, Lorene, like, you're really awesome at your job, but I can't have you in a position where you're going to be in a team of a few people because you actually work really well on your own.
Yep.
And that's that hyper independence, right? Where I won't let anybody else come into my space. At that stage, I wouldn't let anybody else come into my space because they might interfere with my level of control.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy.
No, it's not. No, you just segregate yourself.
Indeed.
It's just, no, I can see how that affects. I mean, we all do that to a degree in certain areas. I mean,
absolutely.
I've had that where, you know, someone messes up and I've been in charge and it's just like, get out of the way, let me do it. You know, because it's going to cost too much money to fix it if you get it wrong. And then you end up just running around trying to do everything. And it can be very stressful, very unhealthy.
Yeah, exactly. And you wear yourself thin because you're trying to do everything for everybody else. And then they end up feeling like they can't do anything right. And I've had that in a couple of relationships where because it's not to my standard, that they feel like they can't do it at all. You know, or they'll feel like I'm going to come through afterwards and redo it anyway because it's not to my standard, you know, which again, not healthy.
Well, so if it's the dishes, knock yourself out. You can just do it to start with.
Yes, but then equally I'll go, but everything's meant to be 50-50 in this relationship.
Can't win.
No, I feel very sorry for those previous blokes for having to put up with me and my hyper independence.
I kept them on their toes.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the remembering lesson in that, not that it was a lesson, but you know, the remembering was that I had to remember how to receive, and I had to remember that it's okay and I am safe to receive. I'm safe to receive love. I'm safe to receive nurturing. I'm safe to receive support, you know, because those are the things that were the voids in my life. I listened to a book just recently over the last few months called The Values Factor by John D. Martini. And that taught me so much around voids, things that especially as children, aspects where we've been feel like we've been neglected almost, that becomes a void. And as an adult, we're trying to fill that void. And for me, that void for me was of love and nurturing, because I was having to love and nurture everybody else, but I wasn't receiving anything for me. So it became a void in my life that I was trying to control and manipulate others to come in, but it wasn't really working either that way, because I was in the habit of controlling a situation and being hyper independent, because that was my safety zone. So I was in a very conflictual universe there, conflictual realities of like super controlling, but also really wanting love and nurturing, but those two can't combine.
It's easy done. You don't even, you notice when you've been relying on yourself for so long, you don't even notice you're doing it. You know, I've had friends pull me up and go, what are you doing there? That's borderline manipulation. I'm like, oh shit, I'm not like that. Why am I doing it? You know, sometimes you don't even notice.
Absolutely. I'm just having a quick check through the chat. Oh, look at all these lovely things. Oh, I love it, Amanda. I really like this, not wanting to make myself look too naughty, but I do struggle with authority, so team sounds better. Me too. I don't like being told what to do. As somebody who's a recovering hyper-independent, I do not like being told what to do. Love it.
Now, you specialize in trauma release and trauma sessions. Can you tell us?
Okay. So I can actually give you an example of something. I've just this afternoon had a gorgeous session with a lovely gentleman. And as I was doing this session, I became aware, like, as body workers, we quite, for me anyway, I don't know if everybody is the same, but for me as a body worker, what will happen is that if I'm doing a hands-on body session, even on like a distance session, my body will no longer be mine. It's simply a information spot. So I can't find the words. And it's like, it'll show me where they are sore, where they may have had past traumas, where they might be in some kind of pain or have an imbalance or something like that. So I was doing this session, and all down my right side was like just aching and aching and aching. And I'm like, oh, and the intensity was just getting worse and worse and worse. And because of this type of session that I was doing, I was like, can we wait till another time to do this? Or maybe till the end of this section of the session to do this? And everything just kept saying no, and it just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And I was like, oh, okay, right. And so I said to the client, hey, have you, and I asked a few questions of like, what is this? Who does it belong to? Is it this lifetime? Is it a previous lifetime? And I use my awareness, I use my tools of knowing what is true. And during this session, I'm highly connected in with the person's higher self as well. So we very quickly identified that it was a this lifetime thing, but it wasn't necessarily very recent. It was something from the past that they're still holding on to very deeply. And I just said to the person, like, do you have someone in your life that like has stabbed you in the back, or like metaphorically stabbed you in the back? And they're like, yeah, I have actually. It goes, does it have to be really recent? I was like, no, this is not recent. This is older, but this lifetime. They're like, yeah, absolutely. And so we did some release work with that in the middle of a session when I was really not focused on that at all. And as we went through, it was like the ache, the intensity through my right hand side completely dissipated. As they actually went through the process with speaking with that person and having the interaction with that person, and then releasing them and cutting the cords and removing the roots and all of that sort of good, yummy stuff, they actually got to a point of peace within themselves, and their body relaxed. And so they could actually let that go as well. So that's just something that's happened like today.
Oh, that's lovely. Do you want to carry that? Because that you were talking before about how that affects us. Can you talk about how some of that stuff affects us in our later life if we don't deal with it?
Oh, absolutely. So there is so many instances of unprocessed trauma. For example, I had a client I have a client actually, who had, as a toddler, a 2-year-old, witnessed their parents arguing and fighting. And as a result, felt at that time that they don't belong here and that everything is their fault. And if things fail, it's their fault. and they're now in their over middle-aged time. And, you know, they, again, had to process. We had to go through that space of processing through and then reintegrating that 2-year-old self back to them with all the love and the nurturing that 2-year-old self needed to have to feel whole again, you know. So that's part of that relationship counseling, if you like, that holistic counseling that I do, where it's like those parts and pieces of ourselves that we've separated from, they can actually come in and be reintegrated, which is really cool.
Awesome.
Then there was another one where I was like, we were doing the sway technique that I mentioned earlier. So it's a muscle testing technique where you got to be a little bit hydrated before you do it, because otherwise it can mess up your results a little bit. But you face north, and it's actually really important to face north, as I learned. And what you do is you stand with your arms just relaxed by your side, and then you close your eyes and you say yes, and you should, but not always, move forward. And then you come back to center, and then you say no, and you should move backwards, but not always. And this particular client, her yes and no were around the wrong way, or opposite way. And I was like, So we did some healing stuff around the other things that were going on for her first. And then I said to her, is there a part of you that's like on the other side of the planet? And she's like, yeah, that's really light for me. So we literally, she had a point of trauma in her childhood. She had separated off part of herself to the other side of the planet, so she was safe. And quite often we do that. We do this as a safety technique.
Okay.
And so what we did was we brought her back together again. We had that conversation. We, you know, reintegrated that part of her that had been separated off when she was a child. You know, super cool stuff.
So that when people do that and they separate as a fragment, so that just affects us like trauma. Yep.
Absolutely. There's quite often what will happen there is there'll be illnesses that nobody can explain why are there.
Yep.
But you'll discover things like it'll be some kind of trauma, some kind of lack, some kind of irritation, a thought, a feeling, an emotion that has been locked up into the body. What is my connection with New Zealand? I'm a New Zealander. I'm a happy little Kiwi. I was actually born in New Zealand, and I moved out here in 2010. So I'm coming up to 12 years here in beautiful South Australia, and I love it.
Yeah, South Australia's pretty chilled.
Yeah, it's the most like New Zealand that I could imagine. And the funny thing is I had never even stepped foot here before I moved here.
Okay. So what? So it was just, was it for work or something? Or you just like, I'm going to go to Adelaide?
I was in the building industry and had been in the building industry for roughly 13 years. I'm actually a trained architectural draftsman.
Yep.
And I went to America. I had a dream of having a white Christmas, morena. And I created that. And so I spent 10 days in Nevada, and then I spent 10 days in New York. So I spent Christmas in Nevada, New Year's in New York, had 10 days in both. And then as I was flying back from New York City, and that was a 24-hour flight with only a couple of 2-hour layovers. So it was a lot of flying time back to New Zealand. And it was a lot of thinking time. And I realized very quickly that as I was like really tuning in on me and my life, where I was at, what I was doing, it's like I'm really not enjoying being in the building industry anymore. And I need to get out of it before I start hating it. because I still love architecture. And that was one of the things that New York showed me, is that I just really love architecture. I love how buildings come together. And I especially love the older buildings because they're so much more creative and artistic and, you know, all that sort of stuff. All this beautiful architecture we have here in Adelaide, it just makes my heart sing so much. And as I was coming out, I was like, okay, what things have I done? Because my resume is like so long. I've done so many different things in my life that I was like, what things have I done that have really made me feel good at the end of the day? You know, even if they're challenging or whatever, it's like I still feel like at the end of the day I've done a good job and I've contributed in some way. And the only thing that really came out was when I did a 3-month stint at a disability resource centre for adults with disabilities. And so I was like, okay, right, how am I going to do that? What kind of course or whatever can I do to get into that kind of industry? And the way it looked like I had to do it was through like through the childcare side of things. And so I went, there was no courses that started mid-year in New Zealand at that time. And I was like, no, I need to do this now. when I really set my mind on something, it's like everything happens very quickly. And it was just like, no, I need to have this happen right now. And I was over in Australia. Yes, Amy, I can. When I went to Australia for my birthday, and my auntie, who I went and stayed with, said, oh, I'm going to go to this little information session from Charlton Brown. And so she goes, do you want to come? It's like about nannying and childcare and stuff. And I was like, sure. She's in Brisbane. And I was like, I don't want to live here. No way.
Too hot?
It's humid. I don't like the humidity. Makes my hair go makes me tired. And we went to Charlton Brown. It turned out that they actually had a what do they call it? A ATO, is that right? Accredited Training Authority. Branch down here in Adelaide.
Australian Tax Office.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, no, not that. No. The training, they actually had a training branch here in Adelaide, and she had a friend here in Adelaide, and she goes, I'll hook you guys up. So I was like, sweet. And that one started mid-year. So, yeah, I made the jump, and I just said, see ya.
So you love it?
With me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Healing's good. It's nice being able to, when you get that feedback, when you help people, it's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Now, you do past life trauma,
Yeah.
How do you do hypnosis, or how do you go about that?
So, do you know of a gentleman called Dr. Brian Weiss?
No.
He did a book called Many Lives, Many Masters, and that was basically how I learned how to do this particular technique. And I've over the years adapted it to be my own flow.
Brian Weiss, was it?
Weiss. And if you get his book, Many Lives, Many Masters, you can often get it with the CD that comes along with it that has 2 spiritual regressions, meditations on it. So that was basically how I learned it, by doing it for myself and going through that process of actually learning what it meant to do a past life regression and to heal that. And so, for example, there was one of my lifetimes that I went back to. I was struggling a lot with, in this lifetime, of like overeating, and it was like just an unbelievable amount of overeating. And I was like, why is this happening? I don't understand. And it wasn't, and at that time I was sort of inching up in weight again, and I was like, my first marriage was a very toxic marriage. I was married to a man who was at the end of our marriage, got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, had narcissistic tendencies, and was a gaslighter. And we were together for 7.5 years. So I had a great amount of remembering of how to actually manage those sorts of different toxic relationships. And it was a great book opening for me. But in that time, I gained a lot of weight, and I was nearly 100 kilos at that time. And so in healing from that relationship, I lost about 20 kilos. And at the point where I was, starting to notice things were coming, the weight was coming back on again. I was in another relationship with somebody who was a narcissistic light. And I was like, I know that this isn't a good thing. I know there's something going on within me that's encouraging this weight to come on. It actually doesn't really have anything to do with him. It's to do with me.
Yep.
So I was like, okay. And I was like, what can I do? And I got the message from my team saying, listen to the CD. I was like, okay. So I ran myself a bath and made it really nice and lovely and nurturing, and put the CD in the old laptop and popped it on. And I was taken to a lifetime where I was a little street urchin, think sort of early 1900s England. Yep. And I was a little boy. And at this point in where I jumped into that lifetime, and I was initially you are looking over the body, but then I was like in the body. And so I could see what was around me and all that sort of stuff. And I was basically on death's door. I was all of about maybe 5 years old. There was too many people in my family that my parents could no longer afford to feed me. So I'd basically been sent out. The workhouses were all full. And so there was no space for me to go there. There was no space at the church. There was nowhere for me to go. And so at that point in my life of that particular lifetime, what became important to me was food meant safety. Food meant love. Food meant family. Food meant warmth. And so then in this particular life regression, there was a man that came down the alleyway and he booted me in the guts just because he could,
Yeah.
So of course that cemented, without food I get abused. So there's that element as well came in. And so as I'm in the little boy's body and I'm starting to die, I've stepped out of that into the form that I am today, or on that day. And I essentially brought them into me, and to give them the words and the encouragement and nourishment and nurturing that they required, so that the promises and all of the belief systems of that particular lifetime didn't flow through to now.
Yeah.
And in doing so, I actually stopped myself from overeating, even though I was going through a lot of emotional upheaval at that time within that relationship. And now I'm very conscious of, like, if I start eating a lot more, like, what's going on here, body? What are you trying to tell me? It becomes, instead of it being an unconscious belief system that I have to eat to feel safe and warm and nurtured, now it becomes like a little bing, hey, you're overeating, or you're actually full, but you're still eating. What's going on here?
Gives you that choice back.
Exactly. So it becomes a conscious choice rather than an unconscious one.
And then it's Tim Tams. You're like, I'll have one more anyway.
That bag of chips should have lasted 4 days. One day, gone.
Yeah, I don't buy them every day, so
no. And again, that's a conscious choice too, to just not have them in the cupboard.
Yep. So, how did you fall into spirituality?
Ooh, okay. It's always sort of been floating through my life in spirit form. I remember at that point when the first memory that I really remember of spirit floating around my world was when we moved to the country, and I'd come from the city and I moved to the country, and I went out to the letterbox to check the mail, but we didn't actually get our mail at the letterbox. We got it at the post office, but I didn't know that. I was 7 and I went out to check the mail, and I became aware of this man standing in the door, in the gateway. And it was a big, tall man to a 7-year-old. He was big and tall, and it was like just dark. And I was like, and I ran inside going, oh my God. And I slammed the door shut, and Mum's like, what's going on with you? I'm like, didn't say anything. The second time it happened, I've actually shut the door and locked it, which is weird, again, because this is the 80s in the country. We didn't lock the doors ever unless we were actually going away on holiday. And that was the only time you ever locked the doors. And Mum's like, Lorene, what's going on? And I said, oh, there's somebody out there. And she's looked out there and she's going, Lorene, nobody's out there. You what are you doing? You silly thing, sort of thing. And at that point, my spiritual awareness actually got shut down. Because, here's your mum. She's the position of authority and knowing. So, of course, if she says there's nobody out there, maybe I am just making it up. And she was correct in some ways. There was no body out there, but there certainly was a spirit. She just wasn't willing to see it or be aware of it. If only I'd had that kind of discernment back when I was 7, maybe it would have been a bit easier. Then jumping forward into my mid-20s, there was a bit of ghost stuff that happened there. There was a little bit more ghosty stuff that happened at the end of my 20s, but the spiritual opening really for what I do in my healing happened after the end of my first marriage. And I had gone off, and I'm going to get a bit girly, information for you. So I went off to get my pap smear done, and it came back with abnormal cells. And I was like, that's a bit weird. I've been getting my pap smears done for 10 years. I've never had anything like that before. And so they said, oh, look, come back in 3 months. Maybe we did something wrong with the swab or whatever. Come back and we'll do another one. Came back again. It was abnormal cells. And I was like, And then inside me, I just knew this was not something medical. This was something spiritual. It was something that was energetic, that was not right with me. And around the same time, I'd gained some new friends that were into the law of attraction. And so I went off to a law of attraction meeting, and they were actually doing like a group session. It wasn't just on law of attraction, it was on tapping on this particular meeting. And the ladies there, they had a big table full of books to buy. And this is in the days before you had FPOS that you could have on your phone or as a machine or anything. And I only had, I didn't have enough money to cover the book that I saw, which was this one. So this is Ina Segal. Her new version of her book is lots of oranges and stuff on it. But so this book here, I picked it up. It was like the only book on the whole table that actually looked like it was in color. All the rest looked like they were gray or just black and white. And so I picked it up and I've gone, I wonder if there's anything in here around healing the vagina. I was like, Turned out there was. And so the friend that I went to the meeting with, I said to her, oh man, I've so got to get this book. And she goes, well, how much is it? And so she loaned me the balance of the money, and I took the book home. And every morning, every night for a month, I did the process that she says to do in there. And it was about releasing a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, about past relationships and all that sort of stuff. Because, of course, as a woman, that's where all that stuff ends up being stored from relationships. And at the end of the month, I went off to the doctor again, got the nurse to do me another swab. What do you know? It comes back clear.
Okay.
And I'm like, there's something in this. But in the meantime, they'd actually booked me in to do a biopsy. And they were like, go off and do the biopsy anyway. And I'm like, do I have to? I feel good within myself. Because that was the other thing I noticed, that where it had previously felt really heavy and really dense, now didn't feel like that anymore. I felt really light and healthy, and like the density that was in my pelvic region was gone. And I was like, I don't feel like I need to go. They're like, I'll just go anyway. All right. So I went off, and the obstetrician, the gyno, I guess he would have been, he had me up in the stirrups, and so I actually got to see my cervix, which was really cool, because he showed that to me on the big screen. He's like, would you like to have a look at your cervix? I'm like, hell yeah.
Do you want to come and take home? No.
And it was so cool, because it was just like I learned more about the inside of my body. And I love that sort of stuff. And turns out, what do you know? Nothing to find. It was all clear. So that was really my first touchings of knowing that I could actually heal myself. And it was funny, because in the book she talks about divine healing intelligence. Please heal, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't till many years later I clicked that the divine healing intelligence that she's speaking to is within us. It is the element of us within us. I was a bit slow on the uptake on that one. You get it when you get it. So I'm just, for those of you who don't know Ina Segal, there you go. I'm giving you a shortcut. Oh dear. Oh yes, Amanda. Yeah. So yeah, now I actually get to do a lot of feminine healing and reconnection work too. Do a lot of healing around that for women. And like, we heal what we know. We heal what we've experienced. And so therefore we can be healers for others. And that's why I know now that my relationship variety had to be that way, to give me the set of skills, gifts, and abilities that I have now to be able to be such a flexible healer. Somebody who can come to me, like a client can come to me with just about anything, and I'll be able to go, here's this big, huge menu of stuff that I can choose from. And we'll try this, and we'll give this a go, and we'll give that a go, because that's what the teams are telling me to do, or that's what creators are telling me to do, or, whatever is required.
Well, that's good, because, as I say, in an energetic universe, people don't realize how much that just affects everything. Just having that dense trauma, and it just that energy just alone just stops the body working the way it should work.
100%.
Yeah. And especially with like doctors go, oh, well, we don't totally understand the placebo effect. It's like, haven't you worked it out yet, people? Come on. Haven't you worked it out yet?
The power of the mind is very, very strong. But it's not just the power of the mind, because it's more about the trust in self. And it's a trust in the process. And it's also the belief system that you can actually heal you. And that anything can shift and change in your body at all.
And then people create that space, and because they think they're on the right track.
Absolutely. It's like, I remember one of the modalities that I play with, there's a point of view in there about, because they get asked about cancer. And it's like, the point of view in that particular modality is, what are you dying to get out of? It's like, if somebody develops cancer, what are you dying to get out of? And it's a bit of a confronting kind of question to ask, really, because a lot of people who have cancer and their support network is all like, oh, this is the most terrible thing in the world. It's like you're a victim and blah, 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 blah. But if you're sitting in victim mentality, you can't get out of it, right? You can't heal that because you're sitting as a victim.
Yeah.
And I was at a friend's birthday party, but I didn't really know many of the people there. And one of the ladies was talking about her daughter. And I didn't know any of these people. And I was like just quietly listening. I do my wallflower thing in those sorts of situations. And she was saying how her daughter has, you know, had a baby recently, but it's so bad because she's come down with cancer. And, you know, it's just such a terrible thing because, you know, now she can't go back to work as quickly and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I said to her, so I'm just curious, like, when she was pregnant, you know, what sort of things was she saying about work and staying home with baby and stuff like that? And she goes, oh, well, actually, she did say that she wished she could stay home with this baby a lot longer than she did with the first one because she felt like she missed out on so much because that first one had to go back to childcare so soon or had to go into childcare. So this beautiful lady, instead of just actually communicating with her husband to say, hey, hubby, you know, I would really love to be able to stay home a lot longer. How can we make that happen?
Yeah.
Instead of actually having that conscious conversation with him because she was afraid of his reaction to that, instead she turned around and created a cancer, which didn't completely impede her from everything, but made her just sick enough so that she had to stay home and had to stay home with her 2 children. And then she got the added extra benefit of a lot of other people helping her out because she had cancer.
Okay. It's not the first choice you would pick, but I guess if it works.
It's to do with that subconscious thinking.
Yeah.
You know, it's like consciously we wouldn't choose that, right?
No.
But subconsciously she was saying, I wish I could stay home with my baby longer. So the body went, well, okay, this is how we can do that. This is how we can create that for you. Let's go.
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about being careful, it's just being aware.
Yep.
Because if you're being careful, then then there's an element of fear attached to that and being afraid. So if you're just being aware, it's like, yes. Yeah.
And shooting your mouth off in the moment. So when you first started getting into spirituality, what were if you could go back to when you first started your spiritual walk, what advice would you give yourself?
That's a good question. I would say just learn to receive.
Yep.
Learn to receive a lot sooner. The journey would have been a lot quicker and easier if I had learned how to soften and receive on all levels. You know, it would have been a much quicker journey. And I would have perhaps made some different choices around the people that I was around for a little while there. But in saying that, I don't regret any of it either. Like any of that journey that I've had has created the spaces for me to remember my truth and remember how to be me and how to have all these gifts, talents and abilities so that I can actually be of a contribution to others who have had that trauma or, you know, require that space of bringing those parts and pieces of themselves back together again, because I've had to do that for myself and I had to do the hard roads to get there. You know, and now that I've done it for myself, it's like it's so much easier. I can go, right, here we go. Okay. You could go have fun with that.
Nice. So how can people get hold of you? Do you do healing online so people don't have to be in South Australia?
Yeah, I do. I actually have something called an intuitive reading healing session.
Yep.
So what that is, it's a 1 hour session, and you can do it from anywhere in the world. I have clients from all over the world that pick that particular session, and I do use a little bit of card work if required. Sometimes it doesn't even pop up, but it's just that's kind of like the gateway drug. It's a point of connection, so that people kind of know what it is. And what happens is we do a little bit of card work at the beginning, maybe the first half of the session, and the second half is healing work, and it's guided meditation type healing work. Sometimes it's straight up just body work, sometimes it's not. That is one of the easiest ways for people all around the world to get in touch with me. I love doing in-person bodywork sessions, and like that, it's so fun. But if you know quantum mechanics, you also know that it doesn't really have to be in person to be effective. That's the beauty of it. So people can get in touch with me via craftingpossibilities.com, and all my bits and pieces are up in there.
Yep, I think I've your links are in the show notes, your website and your Facebook page. Absolutely. Otherwise, people keep bugging me.
No.
Yeah, and when they do bug me, they go, "Oh, have you got the link for that?" And I go, "Yeah, but it's in the show notes."
Yeah, I love it.
That's it, people. I love you too. I'm not your secretary. Well, thanks. Is there anything you'd want to add before we?
Yes, actually, there's
absolutely.
a tool. There's a tool that I'd like to just take people through just quickly. So do now is just sit back, relax, just drop your shoulders down a little bit. Just let your hands sit freely in your lap. Close your eyes. Take a lovely big deep breath in and out. And just become aware of your body, and then go diving down even deeper into the cells and molecules. Keep breathing nice and deeply, right down to the atomic level, where you can see the protons and the neutrons all zooming around, and just really acknowledge the fact that you are 99.99999% space, and that anything and everything can be changed within your body in a blink of an eye if you actually truly choose it. Now, expanding out your awareness out to the size of the room that you're in. And now expanding out your awareness to the size of the town or the city that you're in a big bubble up into the sky and down into the earth. And now expanding out your awareness to the size of the country that you're in, and now to the size of the planet. Expanding out your awareness to the size of the solar system, and now the galaxies and the universes, and expanding out beyond your lifetimes, dimensions, realities, and non-realities. Beautiful. Stay expanded out, and then just bring your focus back to your body again. And grab your sense of allowance. We've spoken a lot about the allowance today, so let's have a little bit of playtime with that. And expanding that out beyond your body to the size of the room. Expanding out your sense of allowance to the size of the city or country, city or town you're in. Expanding out your allowance to the size of the country, and now to the size of the earth. Expanding out your allowance to the size of the solar system, and the galaxies, and the universes, and beyond your lifetimes, dimensions, realities, and non-realities. And now expanding out your allowance beyond your awareness. Take a lovely big deep breath in. And out. And just allow your body to really embrace and relax into the space of ultimate knowing, perceiving, being, and receiving of the truth that you are way bigger than you've ever imagined. And from here, you can perceive, know, be, and receive absolutely anything you could possibly imagine. From this space, you can talk to people and know if they're lying to you. From this space, you can respond rather than react. From this space, you can have ultimate peace and calm, no matter where you're at on your healing journey. Take one more big deep breath in and out. Breathing in with gratitude and out with ultimate love, unconditional love for all it is. Thank you very much. And open your eyes. Hi.
Awesome.
So that's a fantastic tool. If you have to have a conversation with anybody that's a little bit of a challenge, you get a sense that there's going to be a bit of a challenging moment.
I would have said dodgy.
Yeah, you can actually use that tool. It's the expanding out tool. Okay, I've taken you guys through it really slowly so that you get a sense of what it is. But what you can do from here on out, now that you've been taken through it once, is you can go, I expand out beyond where I've been before. Okay, so that means you're expanding out your awareness beyond wherever you've been before, and you can expand out your allowance beyond that. Be aware that when your allowance is not greater than your awareness, when your awareness exceeds your allowance, that you will be cranky. You will get really cranky around other people quite quickly. And that's not just because we've done that tool. It's probably when you look back over your life, you'll see that So yeah, when you start noticing that you're just unreasonably cranky at people, just go, oh, truth, is my allowance, is my awareness exceeding my allowance right now? There you go.
That's what happens when people first awaken. Their awareness just goes boom, and their acceptance allowance hasn't developed, and they find a lot of people intolerant around them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know I had that many times. And it's like when you learn a new tool or a technique and you like come across people who don't know it yet and are not open to it, that you're like, let me tell you about this thing. This is great. Yeah. This is going to heal you. This is going to make you feel so much better. And they're like going, fuck off. Asshole.
Tinfoil wearing hat. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to sit back as a more developed healer going, that was not so great a choice.
No. But you learn somewhere.
You have to go through that process too of learning how to be, and remembering rather how to be in allowance of where other people are at, you know, and in their journeys. And some people will never ever become I don't like to use the word awaken, but you know, they'll never get off of that treadmill.
Yep.
You know, and that's just where they're at, and that's what they're choosing. And you have to, for your own sanity, respect that and honor that. Yes. You know.
Yep.
And we can do that by having allowance for them and their choices.
And it's easier when you keep quiet around those people.
You get to observe a lot. It's kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then when they start asking questions, I still now I just don't go, oh, that's interesting.
I ask them more questions back.
Oh, yeah. As long as you don't confuse them.
Now, that's sometimes the best way to do it, because then they'd be quiet. They get confused.
Okay, well, thanks again. I'll speak to you after the show. So just to get hold of Lorene, all the show notes are in there, and people can book sessions book sessions, and you do readings, or is it just reading healings?
Reading healings, body work. That's pretty much my jam at this stage. But, you know, even I work with people's businesses as well. Yep. So I just chuck that in at the end there. So the entity work comes in all shapes and forms. So I've done work with people's homes. I've done work with people's businesses. I've done work with even, you know, removing spirits from homes and that sort of thing. So my work is really a wide variety. It just depends on what people need at that time, or require rather. So yeah, like I have one lady who loves to book bodywork sessions with me. She knows that it's an hour and a half long, and she's in Melbourne. And a bodywork session with me is generally in person, but she books it and we do an online bodywork session for an hour and a half. And that's just how she rolls. Because she's just clever like that.
Because in Melbourne, they're half an hour ahead of us. You only have to work for an hour for the same money.
I know, right? Oh, I love it. So yeah, people can just choose what works for them. I've got a really lovely booking system on my website, so people can actually choose what works for them within my availability, and there's not that backwards and forwards of, you know, oh, when are you available, and you know, all of that. You can just have a look at the website, pick what works for you. Sweet.
Yep.
Makes my life a lot easier.
Oh, it does. It does. I haven't got mine up and running yet.
Oh, it's so easy. Calendly. Brilliant.
Oh, Calendly. I'll write that down.
We can have a chat about that after.
No worries.
Thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on. Thank you, Brooke, for having me.
Yep. You're welcome.
It's so fun.
It is.
So fun.
It's a fun show.
And I've loved being able to, you know, share some of my poetry with you all. And
your books on your website?
Yeah, it is. You can get it through Amazon, and, you know, that's about the only place at this point. But yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Super fun.
So it's like, you know, $30, but you get 10 cents out of every copy sold through Amazon.
I've never received a single dollar.
They're criminals. Okay. Thanks once again, and we'll catch you later next week, people. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.